Hey everyone, Isabelle Fox here. Today's video is everything you need to know about sugar baby arrangements. A lot of escorts trial the waters of sex work by trying out sugar baby arrangements. And a lot of other escorts will actually try to diversify their income by using these sorts of arrangements as well. I myself trialed this a few years ago as a way to diversify my income. It was an interesting mix of experiences, and the reason why I thought to make this video today is a close friend of mine has just begun trialing this for a first time. So I'm going to share with you everything that I wish I had known when I was going through it to hopefully simplify the process for you and give you more success. Firstly, we should actually discuss what is a sugar baby, sugar daddy arrangement and where do you find one. Typically, they're described as a mutually beneficial arrangement. So usually this is companionship and sexual intimacy in exchange for luxurious experiences, gifts, and money. It really is a relationship by negotiation, where terms and forms of payment are at the discretion of both parties. Typically, you find this sort of arrangement on Seeking Arrangement. The website is seeking.com. It's been the most popular and the most publicized over the years. However, there are a plethora of websites like this to choose from. If you just type in sugar baby, sugar daddy, sugar relationship into Google, you'll find plenty of places where you can launch a profile and get started. I want to share with you some hard truths about the reality of these sorts of relationships. There is a common perception that you will go onto this website, find some wealthy, rich man who just wants to wine and dine you, shower you with gifts and money, and that you're going to have this really easy relationship style situation that's ultimately all about the benefits for you. When in reality, this isn't really how it works. So let's go through a few things that are very prevalent in these sorts of relationships, or this kind of arrangement, I would call it. So firstly, it really is a numbers game, just like Tinder. If you've done Tinder dating before, you know that there's, or any sort of online dating really, you know that there's a lot of trash to sort through, but you can strike gold if you're willing to put in the work. It's all about the numbers. If you're already an escort, so if you're looking for sugar arrangements to diversify your income, this will likely be more difficult for you. This is not a pay per hour arrangement. It is a lot more loose and vague than that, and there's a lot more interpersonal skills and requirements that are required to make this work. It's all in the wording. Ultimately, most of the time, and there's always the rare unicorn outlier, however, most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, the male, the client, the guy, the sugar daddy is there for sex and you are there for money. But unlike in escorting, no one wants to hear it and nobody wants to say so. So there's this little dance that you're going to do with your potential sugar daddy around how you get to the reasonable arrangement and get what you want without actually coming straight out and saying it so bluntly and turning them off. If you want to give this a go, you'll likely need to change your mindset about the give and take balance of your relationship. Again, unlike in escorting, where there is a paid per hour agreement as to how this is going to work, you don't have that here. You won't always get a clear payment for each hour of your time. You'll often need to think of this arrangement in a more abstract way or a more big picture way. So ultimately, how is each interaction with this person going to serve me to get what I want? So if what you want is a set amount of money per week, there might be times where you have to do more one week for that money than you do for the next week. But in the grand scheme of things, you should always be assessing, am I getting the value that I want in exchange for what I'm willing to give them? If the answer is yes, then that is a good arrangement for you and you should keep going. Often what happens is these things burn themselves out. Over time, the sugar daddy expects more from you than what he's willing to pay, than what you originally agreed on, and you have to move on. It's highly improbable that you'll have an apartment bought for you, or a Range Rover, or a super expensive plethora of diamonds. Most arrangements are short-term, and that comes back to what I just said, is that they generally become more difficult over time. This even happens in an escorting arrangement. Often you'll have clients who are really red hot and seeing you quite frequently for a short period of time, and then they eventually peter off and you have to replace them. This is due in large part to not only the financial aspect, because it's quite a high ticket item, but also the emotional aspect, is that even though this is a service, it is a highly emotional service service and can become complicated for people when they're seeing the same person over and over again in a very intimate way. Generally, they end up not wanting to pay for it, or something else occurs to have them be turned off the situation, so they start to move on as well. So on that note, you should be looking at your arrangements as always being in transition, because they will need replacing regularly. Sometimes you will strike gold on an arrangement that works out for you for a medium to long-term period of time. But most of the time, you're looking at shorter style arrangements and moving on quickly to the next arrangement. Let's talk about how you set up your profile, which, like in escorting, is really how you attract your potential arrangements, sugar daddies, and for escorting your clients. So I'm going to talk you through the most important parts of setting up your profile. Firstly, you do need to post attractive photos. Now, just like escorting, your face is not necessary. It's understandable that a lot of sugar babies, women, don't post their face for sake of discretion. However, your photos do still need to be attractive. They don't need to be supermodel professional photography quality. They just need to show you looking normal, hot, and down to earth. When you write your profile, make an effort. So demonstrate that you can converse appropriately. Please use spell check and grammar. That basic use of that tool goes a very long way. And the things you want to include are an emphasis on your positive personality traits. Give a brief understanding of what you're looking for, and you want to end with the words, "I'm looking for a mutually beneficial relationship." This tells your potential sugar daddies that you're looking for a relationship where you get something in return. You don't need to elaborate on the profile as to what that means for you. That is a later conversation to have down the track, but you want to make it clear that before you guys get to the first meet, there is going to be a conversation about what mutually beneficial actually looks like. Be prepared to see the term NSA. This means no strings attached, and it strongly suggests that your prospect is married. These can be, for a workable, financially sound relationship, quite good targets for you. But if you're uncomfortable with that prospect, then you're probably going to struggle with an arrangement of this kind. So if what you're looking for is some single bachelor, some Dan Bilzerian sort of playboy that just doesn't want to have to commit to one woman and is looking to shower hot girls with gifts and have amazing experiences, then you're probably looking in the wrong place. Again, there is a very small percentage of people who find that, but for the most part, you are looking at older married men who are unhappy at home, who want a consistent sexual relationship with somebody that they don't have to pay too much money for. Here's an example profile based on what I've just described, minus the photos. So here I'm going to include everything that we talked about, while also keeping it fun and intellectually stimulating and inviting for somebody to actually get in touch. Dear Mr. NSA, I am new to this, so please be kind. I'm a fiery, passionate, and starry-eyed female in her early 20s. While I believe in hard work and focus that keeps one very busy, I also love to indulge in the finer things in life while in the company of a like-minded individual. Passion, intimacy, fun, and flirting are high on my list of must-haves. Yet equally as important to me is maturity, life experience, and the fun of sharing a memory or two. I can partake in all of the above while exploring the city sights, eating and drinking in a new favorite restaurant together, or in the private comfort of cozy quarters. A private life and a personal life can be two very different things, and I understand the need to respect both. I am a good communicator and look for the same quality in others. I am here for a mutually beneficial relationship. I am open to NSA, and if you feel like you could be Mr. Right, please contact me to let the intellectually stimulating conversation begin. Warmly, Isabelle. So I'll break this down paragraph by paragraph. I start by saying I'm new to this, so please be kind, and I'm going to go into detail later on as to why that's important. But I always like to make out like I don't do this regularly, I'm a novice at this, I'm not around seeing tons of different guys. And the reason is it will be stronger for you when it comes to negotiating the arrangement that you want, and it works better for the fantasy. I'm fiery, passionate, and starry-eyed female in my 20s, so I'm giving a bit of information firstly about what I'm actually like, and I also always like to use a word that implies some sort of passion or sexuality or sensuality without being too forward, because unlike an escort profile where you can be very direct about your sexual nature because you're clearly selling sex, Here, you want to be sexually attractive without being too obvious or coming across as like you do this professionally. Then I go on to talk about how I like and understand people who are very busy, because I want to make it clear that I have a busy life and that this is not going to be a main gig for me, so you can't call me every day. And I like to enjoy in the finer things in life while in the company of a like-minded individual. So painting a little picture there of the things that we can do together. Then I go on to elaborate on passion, intimacy, fun, and flirting. Again, I'm trying to explain sexual excitement and get somebody interested. Then I also go on to talk about the things that I'm willing to do with my potential partner. So the classic things like seeing the city, going out to eat together, and private comfort of cozy quarters is my non-direct way of saying I'm willing to have sex. Lastly, I am drawing the distinction between a private life and personal life to guarantee mutual discretion. And I like to emphasize that I'm a good communicator because I genuinely want somebody who I can talk about the important parts of our financial situation with openly. That's always been really big for me in any situation, any work situation, any personal situation, is I want somebody who's a good communicator. So I touch on that there as my sort of pre-qualifiers. Then I end on mutually beneficial relationship, open to NSA. So yes, I get that you'll probably be married, no problem. And please contact me to let the conversation begin. So I'm inviting them to get in touch. Most of the time, just like Tinder, you'll have the guys contacting you and you'll be responding and sorting through them. However, if you see an equally as interesting profile that you think looks really good, then definitely contact them as well. Like I said, this is all about the numbers, so just keep going until you find the right one or the right ones, plural. So here are some tips based on what I've just said and what you should probably look to put in your profile. You are always new to this. This is something you've thought about, kind of looked into before, you learnt about it from a friend, you're not really sure how it works, blah, 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 blah. The reason is when it comes to discussing the arrangement, you don't want to make it seem like you are here for a clear-cut payment situation. You do want to, as part of the little game, emphasize the fact that you are looking for something that is ongoing and mutually beneficial. And we're not saying that because it's a lie, it really is true. You really are looking for something that works for you and works for your life, but you deserve to be paid and get what you are looking for, just like that person deserves to get what they're looking for. You are not an escort. In fact, if escorting is brought up, escorting just isn't your thing. You don't even know that much about escorting. Maybe a friend's done it in the past. You want to avoid the discussion of escorts. A lot of men go onto these websites because they specifically don't want to engage in an escort. Now, there could be a number of reasons for this. One obvious reason is price. Escorts are paid by the hour, so generally it's going to be more expensive for them. Secondly, is they could have some sort of negative stigma about using escorts. That could go two ways, about what he thinks of the person being the escort and doing the job, but more predominantly, it's probably going to be about how he feels about himself. The perception of paying for sex, the shame associated with that, how that hits his ego, are all things that he's probably thinking about. Now, in my humble opinion, a sugar baby, sugar daddy arrangement really is just another form of sex work. However, this is a soft entryway for some people who don't feel comfortable engaging directly in that world. So it's highly probable that your sugar daddy won't want to know that you're an escort or that you have been an escort before. It creates the wrong perception. And also I emphasize that you don't want to come into this with your exact escort business brain working. You will need to think about this in a different way. So if you approach it like an escort and you're constantly thinking when you talk to him about how much you're going to get paid per hour, it's going to be obvious and it's not going to work out. Play to your strengths, whatever they may be. My friend who is giving this a go for the first time is 40, and she feels like her age is a problem for her, that she's too old to be doing this. She's a very attractive woman. She's got a lot to offer. There is no right or wrong. You always have something that is sellable. You always have something that somebody wants. There's always something or someone out there for you. So play to your strengths. If you are older, but you enjoy the finer things in life, you've got experience, they're the things that you want to play on. You can guarantee more discretion because you're older and more mature and you understand where that person is coming from. So whatever it might be, you want to use that to your advantage. Always make it clear that you can be discreet. Even people who are single using this site probably don't want to be ranting and raving about it. So make the clear distinction that you know that they have a personal life, you have a personal life, and you both need to respect that. Invite them to get in touch. This is really just a call to action, like you would give in any sales scenario. Talk about the fact that you're looking for a mutually beneficial arrangement. And be brief yet well spoken. So this isn't going to be a super long letter. It's just going to be addressing the following points and then asking them to get in touch so you can elaborate further. So like I said, talk about your assets. Talk about your willingness to be intimate, passionate, and flirty. So if you are on here understanding that this is going to be a sexual relationship, and you should know now that 90% of the time this is what they're looking for, then talk about the fact in an indirect way that you're open to that. So different words that you can use are intimate, passionate, flirty, sensual, close quarters, alone in a room, blah, blah, blah. All these sorts of words that really just talk about how you're willing to get closer with that person. And of course, mutually beneficial relationship. When it comes to making contact with a prospective sugar daddy, when they get in touch with you and when you get in touch with them, these are things that you want to look for. If you look for this straight up, it will help you to sift out people who aren't going to work for you, which will be a higher percentage of them, and help you to find the people who you really want to focus your energy on. So firstly, look for good quality communication. If they can't communicate well in their first message, how do you think they're going to go communicating 6 months down the track when you have a problem? And problems are an inevitable part of life. You really want to try to find somebody who you can work through whatever those issues may be as best as possible. And most of the time, when you talk about these issues, they're either going to be related to privacy and your personal space, and or they're going to be related to money. Money is the biggest one. Look for manners that goes hand in hand with good quality communication. Look for patience as well. Now, obviously to a point, but patience is important in this scenario, and I'll give you an example. When I first started doing this a number of years ago, I was really young, and even though I had been escorting, I was actually quite hesitant about this sort of arrangement because of the personal nature of it. I was concerned about having such an ongoing situation with the person. I was concerned about my privacy and them finding out who I was because I was meeting with people who lived in my area. So even though I was genuinely serious, it took me some time to get to the point where I was really ready to get started. And the guy who I ended up having my first arrangement with, I actually cancelled on our first meet twice. Now, he didn't get angry or upset or try to force me or coerce me into meeting. Each time he just said, no problem, get in touch with me when you're ready. Now that's a good quality person. Our arrangement was pretty short because I didn't really like the style of the lesser pay. However, we never had a problem. He was always lovely, he always communicated well, and that's the sort of arrangement that is going to last the longest if you find the right terms. So somebody who starts getting upset with you or pressuring you or trying to say, oh, I'll just meet you now, what about this, what about that, they're not going to be a good target for you for this style of arrangement. Sure, you can have a booking like that with a client when you force him to make a deposit and you spend 1 hour with him, but an ongoing arrangement is going to be hard work. You want this person to be willing to speak with you on the phone before meeting. Again, because of the ongoing style of the arrangement, you want to know more about this person before you go and meet with them. So I suggest having a phone call. You can find out so much about a person by hearing their voice. In fact, when I was dating on Tinder, I used to always speak with the guys before I even went on a date with them, because we could be texting and things could sound great, and then I have a phone call with them and it's just totally different, and I know it's not worth my time to go and meet them at all. So you'll save yourself a lot of time by having a brief call. You want this person to be willing to meet for a low pressure coffee before anything else. So I suggest you don't go straight to the dinner, date, sex bonanza. Have a phone call, have a short first meet, get a feel for this person, see if you can even tolerate their company, then look at doing your first meet. If this person wants to go straight to the big meet, I would say that that's personally a red flag. Or if you are going to do that, you need to be thinking, how confident are you at walking out if you get there and you don't feel very comfortable? If you're somebody who has no issue doing that, then fine, but you may as well just avoid that situation by having a short coffee. And don't expect to be paid for this coffee. Again, think long term. You're not there for half an hour expecting to get $300 or $500. You're there to test a potential long-term financially beneficial relationship for you. So it really is worth putting in the time at the front end. And lastly, look for a certain degree of humility. Yes, it would be great to have a sugar daddy who is super wealthy and has a private jet and has multiple companies and wears Rolexes and has a Bentley. However, most people who are serious about doing this, even if they have those things, won't rant and rave about it. And ultimately, it actually isn't important. What really matters is, what is this person willing to bring to the table that you want? They could not have a lot of money, but this means a huge amount to them. So they're willing to spend all of their disposable income on this relationship. That's what matters, really. What matters is you getting what you want and having a comfortable, enjoyable, long-term relationship with somebody whose company you actually like. Don't be afraid to reach out first. In the first few messages, this is really what you're looking to do. So you don't need to spend a ton of time talking to these people, because you are looking for a number of targets to move forward with, because eventually you're just going to get to one. That's how this works. You want to really establish certain things in your initial messages. So firstly, you want some kind of chemistry or connection. Just like when you're talking to somebody on Tinder, you want to have a little bit of back and forth. You want to be able to speak to this person easily. Again, you're not just spending 1 hour with them, so it really doesn't matter anything about them except that they pay and are healthy and clean and respectful. You are going to be meeting with this person, possibly speaking with them over the phone, and you'll have a more ongoing style relationship. So you actually want to like this person to a degree. Get some general information about them. So their bio should look somewhat like yours. You want to know just some brief things. How old are they? What industry are they in? Just so you get a little bit of a profile and you're not just meeting a total stranger. In terms of establishing chemistry or connection, look for a mutual interest. So look for something to connect over so that when you are spending time with this person, you have something to talk about. You want to know what they're looking for. They should be using the term mutually beneficial relationship. Very occasionally, you'll strike on somebody who genuinely hasn't done this before and who doesn't know the terminology. And they are looking for this, but they actually just don't know how to say it. So that generally doesn't happen. Most people get how this works, or they've done it before. But every now and then you will have somebody who won't use that term, and you might have to dig a bit more with them. So to find that out, you can simply ask, have you done this before? How long have you been on this website for? How have you found it? Just general questions that will help you to build the profile about where they're at. And at the same time, this is where you say you haven't really done this before, but your friend suggested it. And when you get to the point of discussing what sort of relationship you're looking for, you can simply talk about the arrangement that your friend has with their sugar daddy that's working really well, and you feel like that could work really well for you. So now saying it like this takes a bit of the pressure off. It isn't saying directly, I want $1,000 a week. You're just painting a picture of a scenario that you know is already working for the girl and for the guy. And you wouldn't just talk about in there what you get paid, you'd talk about what they do. So let's say, for example, what you want is $800 a week for one meet a week. And you're flexible as to how long you spend with that person and to what that meet entails. Now, if this were me, I would always price slightly higher than what I'm actually looking for, because generally there is a small negotiation that takes place. So in this scenario, I would talk about my friend who has an arrangement with a sugar daddy where they meet once a week for $1,000 a week. And it's really just paid on a per meet basis. And they go and they do all sorts of different things. Sometimes they spend the night together. Sometimes they just go for dinner and then back to a hotel. And I would emphasize all of the fun that you've heard about that they've had. And I would generally match that to things that they've already told you that they're looking for. So you want to obviously include the price that you're looking for slightly higher so that you can negotiate down, but you want to emphasize by using the client's words and using an example of an already existing working relationship that's been proved in the real world to work as to the things that you can do together. So you're painting a picture of what you and this potential guy could have fun doing, and you're also including a rough guideline for the amount of money that you're looking for. Now, if his response to this amount of money, to this style of payment being pay per meet, is absolutely out of the question, if he balks at it, if he's repulsed by it, if he says things like, oh, I'm looking for a true relationship that's about more than just money, if he talks about how much he loves buying gifts because he feels that that's more real than actually just giving money, then next. This person isn't for you. If they can't even discuss it at the outset, if they want to try and turn it back on you to make it out like you're looking for the wrong thing, that's no problem. You move on to the next person. I highly recommend not being paid in gifts because it's not really quantifiable or a real measure of how you're going to get paid. So you want to have this conversation, not straight away, you don't hit them with it in the first message, but maybe you're messaging back and forth for 20 to 30 minutes. Then you talk about what you've seen work and what you could potentially be looking for. If they respond with something lukewarm, like, oh, I wasn't really thinking of spending that much, but that does sound interesting, then you know that you've got somebody that you can probably continue the discussion with. This is how your timeline should go, is basically you're hitting these different points or levels of the scenario before you actually get to a working arrangement. One is you're starting with messaging, and in that messaging, you already want to understand their general understanding of how your negotiation will go. So are they open to pay per meet, or do they have some other sort of scenario in mind? And you should have a general, mutually agreed upon situation to go forward on. Then you want to progress to a phone call. Make sure that they're sane, make sure they're not crazy. Then a meet for a coffee. You want a public and discreet location. I always found that large hotel lobby bars or lounges are ideal. There's generally not too many people milling about. After that coffee, so after they've met with you, you've established some sort of connection, they've seen you, you know that they find you attractive, that's when you want to come to the agreement on the terms. So I would have either a phone call or a text situation about how I want this to go. So it could be something like, hi Paul, it was so great to meet with you. I really would be open to moving forward with a proper arrangement. I really feel like this is going to be the best scenario for us. Pay per meet, $800, 1 meet a week. I'm open to being flexible if we miss a meet 1 week to do 2 meets the next week. What do you think? And then basically you agree on the terms. This doesn't need to be a long, laborious conversation. It's simply going to be X amount of money for X amount of meets that are X period of time long. Then you want to get your first payment at the beginning of the first meet and you get started. And you'll find over time, this will either work or it won't. And in the background, hopefully you're developing potential future sugar daddies. You can be as aggressive or as slow as you want. However, this can really all be done in 10 to 14 days if you're really committed, even in a less period of time than that. So if you start your profile and you're just sitting there messaging guys, going backwards and forwards, having a short call, going for a coffee, you can find somebody pretty quickly if you're willing to do the work. So deciding on terms. This is what I would advise anybody who's looking to set up a sugar daddy arrangement. Again, it's not escorting. You're not going to get paid per hour or even close to the same amount most of the time. So the best way to think of your sugar daddy arrangement is that it's income that is passive, ideally steady and reliable. So the guy that I had an arrangement with, he was paying me $750 a week. We would meet once a week for basically 4 hours in a hotel. We'd have a few rounds of sex, we'd relax in between, and then he would go back to his life. It wasn't a high amount of money if you break that down per hour compared to what I was used to earning at the time. However, it was more than enough to cover my rent and some of my other bills, and I knew that he was good for it and that he was stable and going to come back every week. So that's how you want to think of this sort of arrangement. The simplest and most successful arrangements usually follow a pay-per-meet style, so there's a general understanding agreed upon in relation to time and the inclusions. It's not going to be set in stone, it's going to be a rough understanding. So you might price your arrangement at $800 for an evening. So an evening could be starting at 6 or 7 p.m. You have dinner, maybe you go to a second location, and then you go back to the hotel and you spend what it feels like a natural period of time together. But you might lay out that that doesn't include overnights. If you want an overnight or an entire weekend together, you might say that's something that we would need to discuss down the track and something I would ask for more for. Generally, when you get started, begin with a very simple arrangement, and then as you get to know this person, you'll come to understand what you can ask for more and when you should probably pull back and ask for less. In my opinion, gifts don't count as money. If somebody wants to pay you in gifts, this is a red flag. There's no way they're guaranteed or can even be counted upon. The only time I would accept gifts as money would be if you're somebody who highly values these gifts. Then you can ask about them. So to give you an example, I had a friend who's now, we're not talking about gifts, but she really loved to travel and she preferred to be flown everywhere rather than actually receive money because that was really where her passion lay. So she found a sugar daddy who was willing to do that with her. She qualified him. She did a few more pay-per-meet sort of style arrangements. Then over a period of time, she ended up not being paid at all, but he would just fly her to different locations to meet with him. They would spend some time together and then she'd spend the rest of the time there on her own. That's a very unique situation, and I only really ever heard of her having one arrangement like that. But that was something that really suited her needs, that wasn't particularly based on how much she got paid. Your terms will be somewhat loose, so you need to gauge for yourself how taxing this person will be and adjust your rate accordingly. So in the example of the sugar daddy that I had, he was very, very easy. He texted a couple times a week. We would have a short phone call and then I would see him in person. However, a lot of the time, your sugar daddy arrangement won't be as simple as that. They might be looking for more intimacy, so they might want to speak over the phone numerous times a week. They may want to sometimes receive photos of you or engage in sexting. Sometimes they might text you out of nowhere and just want you to meet out of the blue. Not always for a sexual encounter, but just to see you because they're lonely or you're the exciting part of their day. There will also be times where people try to negotiate the rate as you go. And this is generally where the arrangements break down. So at first you won't have the experience to understand these things. You'll have to find out by learning the hard way, like most of us do. However, the best way to counter this is to start with a really simple arrangement where you have a set period of time and inclusions and an amount of money. And then as you go, you will come to understand what this person is like, and eventually you'll probably end up bowing out. But next time when you find your new arrangement, you'll be better equipped with understanding of how these things work and you'll be ready to respond. Here are some warning signs and things to watch out for. Firstly, the sugar daddy wanting to know your personal information up front. There's really no scenario where this is important. Even if they say something like, oh, I'm really a big deal and I have to be very discreet and I want to make sure that I don't know you outside of my private life, that's really just BS. Most of the time, they are trying to gather information which they will use in the future as a way to manipulate you. And I don't like saying that because it sounds really negative, but unfortunately, these sorts of arrangements attract people like that often. A good quality person will understand that discretion goes both ways. And a part of this relationship is built on mutual trust, which of course is where things get tricky. So the best way to avoid that sort of problem for yourself and for the other person in the future is to not exchange that sort of personal information at the beginning of the relationship. You really wouldn't want to be giving out that sort of information until you'd known the person for a long time. Excessive lying. Now, some lying and stretching of the truth, of course, is normal. So the person is probably married and they're going to tell you, I'm separated, or we still live together, but it's only for the kids. We have an understanding that we're not really together anymore, but we don't speak about it. They're probably lying. They're probably just married and unhappy and they don't sleep together anymore. That is fine. What you want to watch out for is somebody who tells you that they're the owner of a global company, that they own a mansion in Vaucluse and they have a private driver and 5 cars, but actually they work at Telstra as a manager and they earn $1,000 a week and they drive a Honda. Now, there's nothing wrong with them actually having that profile if they're willing to give you what you're looking for. However, if they're projecting those sorts of lies and personality traits at the start, they're only likely to amplify and cause you problems over time. In two ways. Firstly, they tend to be a more manipulative sort of person. And secondly, they tend to be a lot of hard work. So they need a lot of reassurance. They need a lot of emotional work done all the time. And you'll probably find that in a situation like this where you aren't paid per hour, it becomes very taxing. Overpromising, and this mostly comes in relation to money or gifts. So if your first conversation begins something like, "Hi babe, I'm a really wealthy guy and I love and really get off on and just love to be so generous and buy the women that I meet expensive Chanel handbags and Louis Vuittons and Dior makeup," you know that this is a warning sign. Firstly, it's not relevant to discuss that at the beginning of the conversation. And secondly, it's highly, highly improbable that it's going to work out. They're trying to prey on what they think is important to you to get you more interested, and you'll generally find that they just don't want to pay you anything at all. They'll use this dangling as a way to keep you on the leash to hopefully get one meet out of you, and they're probably doing this with about 20 girls. The unwillingness to discuss financial terms, and this is usually masked as, "I'm genuinely looking for an intimate relationship that's more about money." And you know what? Maybe that's the 10% of people who are, but that's fine. That's not for you. You want to move straight on. If they won't talk about money now, think about how they're going to be 1 month, 2 months, 6 months in, when they've started wanting 2 meets a week instead of 1, and you need to come to them and say, "Well, I actually need more money than what we originally agreed on because our arrangement has changed." Pushing the boundaries on and changing the nature of your arrangement over time. This is the thing that happens the most, and it's not just a money thing, it's also based on people's emotions. Is perhaps your sugar daddy is married, has 3 kids, is a lawyer, has a super stressful job, and you literally are the light of his life once a week. He is going to become, it's highly probable that he will become quite emotionally invested in you if you do have an ongoing sort of arrangement. And what happens is, they don't intend on doing this, but because you're emotionally invested, they want to know that you're emotionally invested too, and they want to know that it's not just about the money. So they'll try and push the boundaries to have that theory proven. So when they ask you to stay the night, and you don't ask for money in return, but that's really what you want, they take that as proof that, "Oh, she really does like me. Because if she really didn't like me, she would have asked me for more money, but she hasn't asked, so she must like me." And they'll continue to push the boundaries. Now you're thinking, "Oh, I really want to ask for more money, but I don't want him to not pay me next week. So you know what, I'll just do it this one time." But of course it doesn't end there, because he continues to ask. You continue to not ask for money because you're worried that it's going to ruin the relationship, when actually that will ruin the relationship faster. You need to, just like in escorting, be constantly, in an appropriate and sensitive way, be enforcing the boundaries. So perhaps if that person asks you to stay the night, you say, "Oh, I'm not available to stay tonight. I have an early morning tomorrow. Let's discuss it another time." Then when you're away from them, in a more passive and less direct way, you could text them about it and say, "Oh, I really love that you invited me to stay last night. That is something I would be open to. Should we talk about a differing sort of arrangement so we can include that in the future? That sounds so great and so fun." So you're still saying, "Yes, I would love to do that with you. I love our time together," but you're also reminding them that this is a paid arrangement and it does need to remain mutually beneficial and equal. Controlling and manipulative behavior. This is something that happens a lot in these sorts of situations as well. So demanding things of you last minute, being evasive with payment, requiring exclusivity, demanding natural services when you didn't originally agree on them, and demanding your time in an unagreed way. These are things that generally start to happen over time. And once they begin, it's really hard to actually control them and get your relationship back to where it started. So as soon as this sort of thing begins, you're generally better off having your next sugar daddy lined up for sake of finances, and then cutting this off as quickly as possible. And lastly, in the initial phases, attempting to stretch out that contact and having extra social meets without payment. 1 meet is appropriate. There is no need to have more than 1 meet. If the person doesn't know after your initial meet that they're ready to go forward and begin paying, then next, you should be moving on to the next person. I really hope this video has been informative. Like I said, they're all the things that I wish I had known before I started. Most of the time, this is a trial and error sort of situation. You will learn the more that you give this a go. Often you'll find that you'll just come back to escorting if that's what you've been doing, because it probably is simpler. However, give it a go. You never know when you're going to strike gold, and always get in touch with me for further information if I can help.